Hello, guys. This is Josh from Josh That Plays. I wanted to cover our experiences in the Nova Gaming Convention. I had a great time in 2019 as well. In my head, I started thinking about going to more conventions and all that just to see how the scene was, because I usually only stuck to local events and steamrollers and things like that. So that year, it was a good experience. I got to meet a lot of people, and even people now this year I got to see that I missed out in the years in between COVID and whatnot. And just to give you a little background on this year specifically, the first con that I went to was Adepticon, and I had a great, incredible experience there. To be honest with you, one of my favorite events there, or the favorite event that I had there, was the Scars Wall narrative. It was hosted by Privateer Press at the time specifically, and it was an official event. There was quite a number of people, and it was a great time. And I got to see some of the guys that I met in Warfare weekend of the previous year. They were awesome, and a lot of people that I saw from Capticon and whatnot. We continued on, and then I finally decided to also go to Nova. It was kind of like a last minute thing. Me and Nestor were talking about it, and I personally kept debating whether I could go and not, or whether I can get the days off from work. I personally work on a news station and also in a union environment, so there's a lot of hurdles that I would have to go through in order to get those days off, and sometimes they're difficult, sometimes they're not. With predetermined dates, it's easier, but at the time I didn't had the chance to really plan out to go into Nova, and it was kind of like a last minute thing, and my friend Nestor agreed, and we were talking about going to Amtrak and all that stuff, and it started to feel more plausible. And literally, like, the night after, I reserved the hotel. I couldn't believe I found the hotel so quickly right across the street, and we started really getting excited about going to Nova directly. And at the time I was only planning for Warfare, and that's still going to happen, by the way. And I'll talk about that a little more in a second. And our experience in Nova in general, the Amtrak was interesting. We didn't have to worry about traffic or anything like that, so we were just relaxing. We were able to get a a 4-seater, and just relax for the most part. And Labor Day weekend, things are getting a little hectic and all that, but in general, we had a good time getting to the convention. So we basically arrived on Friday afternoon, and I had scheduled an event that night, and we ended up playing in the Scars Wall event hosted by Tried and True, and I gotta say, it was pretty awesome in general. Everybody was very nice. We had just a very home-like environment, very chill. There was high-level games being played on the other side, and everybody was talking about their factions, about where they went. And I personally played Dusk, and originally I was going to play Legion. I had this really wacky double Archangel list. I don't know if it was good or not, but at some point I'm going to try it. I ended up switching to Dusk, and I tried Syrafel, who I love playing. Over the past few months, I haven't been getting any games really in, but I've been keeping up with the meta and learning and trying to keep track of the list that I want to play and stuff. So it was really fun playing her. It was a 75-point list on either side, and this was like a version of the Scars Wall event that was played in Adepticon and other icons, but they have different elements to them, which I found very interesting. So one of the major changes was that once someone was defeated in a table, they can, or once they got to a point where their warcaster is gone and they don't have much left, they can withdraw, and then the other person, and I'm talking about defender side, can spawn basically through their gates, and I believe it was 6 or 8 inches away from the gate. And that added a new layer of complexity to it, which was actually very interesting. And each side was doing their thing, and the attackers were coming with their colossals and stuff. My opponent had an incredible an incredibly powerful Sadesh list, which was very strong, and I was personally admiring the strength and the power of the list. Typically in the narrative events, you normally don't see a very powerful list like that, but it's fine. You can play whatever. And as I spoke to my opponent, he mentioned that he was mostly playing, in the competitive tournaments, so he didn't really have another list really to play. So I told him, you play what you want. That's part of the freedom of in the narrative environment. You can play whatever list you want. You can try different things. You can be very thematic. You can be very tactical in the way you operate and so on. So I chose the list. I kind of made my list honestly really quickly off the bat, and it ended up working out. There was some mistakes that I made on the personal level where I pretty much forgot about a couple of models that I had behind buildings, and sometimes I was so focused on the macro level part of the game that I forgot about the micro, and so that affected some of the gameplay there. At some point, one of my allies was able to take down the mammoth, which took a long time to do because of the whole I believe sacrificial pawn that Sadesh has. So if you target him, it goes to the mammoth, and then the mammoth was in the Kriya aura, so its armor went up to 24 at some. I forgot all the layers of buffs, but at the end of the day, to shooting, the mammoth was armor 24, so it was really hard to wound the mammoth, which is it is what it is. At the end of the day, it went down. You had these turrets that would help, and then you would activate them and so on when you gain the coins and things like that. So it was really cool. In the end, it's a really fun and a fun narrative play environment, and you get to try different things. You could still play your War Machine armies, so you get this multi-layer thing, and it was just not just an ordinary match, but you had an overall thing that you had to worry about, which is really cool. And I always like when you have your base game, and this could apply to any game system. It could even be 40k, where you have your base game and you have your rules set on that, and then on top of that you have another layer of strategy and tactics that can affect your individual game and then the overall game, and I like that. So that was Friday. I ended up cutting now towards the end, but the event was over because I had to wake up really early in the morning to do an alien RPG. So on Saturday, Nestor and I did the alien RPG, and that was very interesting. It was the first time I actually played it. I knew about it. I actually have the rule book, and at some point we were thinking about doing running, or I was planning to participate in an RPG hosted by Nestor, but scheduling and all, work and all that didn't pan out. But when we decided to go to Nova, we were like, okay, let's try to see if we can do some events together. So we picked that, and that was fun. The GM there was really fun. Right now his name escapes me, but he did a great job. It was just to recap, it was basically some of us were Colonial Marines. There was a guy who was like a local marshal in the town, and we were tasked to find out what happened to some cattle that were native to the planet. And as we progress, you go into go to the town, and we start scouting the areas, and then we ended up running into aliens. And one of the situations was, I thought it was pretty funny, was, and horrific at the same time, was that the marshal, who was basically like the politician in town, in charge of the colony, he gets captured by one of the aliens, and it starts going up like 15-20 feet in the air. So one of the Marines starts shooting and shoots the alien, but it's still not enough to kill it. And finally one of the guys shoot, alien gets crushed and blows up in mid-flight, but then all the acid falls on the marshal, and the marshal dies. So, and the marshal is controlled by one of the players. So we're all laughing, but at the same time, this guy just died too. So it's like a weird dichotomy there. But like, it was interesting, and he ended up, and the GM ended up allowing him to re-roll a character, which was like a kid that was connected to the story. But at the end of the day, most of us survived. One of the Marines who was like the sergeant, I believe. No, the corporal was taken by another alien, and he ended up detonating a bomb which took out him and the alien. My character survived. Nestor's character survived, who was a really bad medic because he kept getting bad rolls, and he was at the verge of dying, but the commanding officer was able to heal him. It was very interesting. It without getting into too much details of the rule set, it has this whole like panic system, where a stress system rather, and whenever there's stress, it adds an additional die to your rolls. So all the rolls are governed by d6s, and if you have a stress die, it can add to your successes, but if you get a 1 on any of your stress die, then you have this stress table, and some of the effects are really crazy. Like one of them, you can go so bananas scared where you just drop your weapon and run away. So that happened to one of the commanding officer, which was pretty bad, but he was able to recover. And then the additional die also allows you to get more successes. So it was like a balance, and you could purposely give yourself stress so that if you have a low stat, so like if your stat line is, let's say 2 for reconnaissance or whatever, you only get 2d6, and the only successes are 6s specifically. So if you add a stress die, then you got 3 dice, and then now you have a better chance of getting a 6. But if you don't, you get a 1, then you're in trouble. So you're playing that little meta game with the dice themselves, not just your pure stats. So like, unlike in D&D, you have your very specific stat line, and sure, there may be classes and abilities that you can modify your dice rolls, but this system in the Alien RPG, it's baked in to your rolls themselves. So regardless of what your stats are, you can keep adding stress, and that will change how your character performs, but also opens the opportunity for negative things to happen, or just simply silly stuff. And overall, we had a great time. It was about 3.5 hours. The only thing I would say, though, about the hotel specifically, and this is going to come up because of the RPG, that floor where the RPG was, navigating to get to that room was kind of odd. It had these like really winding corridors that all of us participating were like, how the hell do we get here? So that was a little odd. I was even thinking like, it's almost like the I don't know. It was strange. It's also the hotel where Reagan got shot. So one of the people at the convention mentioned that, and I was like, oh crap, I didn't even realize, but I thought it was kind of funny. On a side note, one of the rooms that I thought was really cool looking was the room, I will say the hall where the 40K events were happening. It had this like blue hue, purple hue to it, like almost looked like a theater. It just looked really nice. It looked a little dark, but I could see, I'd spent some time there just checking out the tables and armies, and it just looks nice overall. And speaking of the convention itself, how we navigated the con, the vendor area was really nice. It was several times bigger than what I remembered in 2019. Obviously different location, but just it's amazing how much the con has grown since then. It was quite encouraging, honestly. It encouraged me to think about going next year, which I think, outside of anything unexpected, I plan to go next year. And I believe Nestor was speaking of like doing some Gundam classes and whatnot, because there was a lot of people that were requesting it and asking him to do, and that should be interesting too. And that was, for the most part, the greater half of Saturday with the RPG. And that same day, I had scheduled the narrative event for the Five Fingers narrative event that Tried and True were running, and that for me was some of the most fun War Machine gaming that I've ever had. I know that didn't sound like complete English there, but it was just fun. I was immersed in it. Without diverting my attention to it too much, but in terms of the experience. But what I wanted to say is that in the beginning of that narrative event, you have two sides again, just like kind of like the Scars Wall thing, but this time there's a different scenario. You have this whole giant town, sprawling town with custom terrain, 3D terrain, really well laid out. It just looked really cool. It looked like a legit city, but there's still space for you to move your models and stuff, so it wasn't cumbersome. So they had a delicate balance between really nice 3D terrain, painted, all that stuff, and then also enough space so you can deploy your troops and stuff. So I opted to do the attackers because I did the defenders on the Scars Wall event. Different event, but I wanted to choose a different point. So I used a different list this time. I wanted to try Tyrus, and I never played Tyrus before, and I just checked his rule set and all that, and so I was always interested in trying his list with him, and man, it was incredible. I'll be honest with you, so many things that he can do that applied to this specific narrative event, and it was incredibly fun. So like on the attacker side, we are encouraged to destroy buildings. So literally you're in there and you're attacking buildings, but some of these buildings have effects. So like one of the buildings I destroyed, before I destroyed it, you can go there and interact with them almost like in an RPG level, and you roll 2d6, and then they'll determine some effect, and then for one of the things I asked, I want to see if I can get like barrels out of this munitions facility, and have those barrels like roll into another building. And I rolled, I forgot what roll I got, and he told me basically you get, so there's these like monkeys that came out in barrels, but they're full of munitions. So over time they start just moving in a direction, but to my advantage it moved towards the defenders. And so after that I was like, okay, cool. So then I ended up destroying the building. So every building afforded us 2 points, those buildings that were named, so like the armory and all that. And then there's other buildings that are basically buildings that don't really have a function, but technically you can still roll a 2d6 and potentially get something out of it, maybe weapons, maybe a healing kit, whatever. And so those are only 1 point. And in the middle, just for reference, there's a big giant inn that's like like maybe 3 or 4 stories, I believe. That also was worth 2 points. And then there's a wall, etc. And you could destroy the wall and stuff. So the defenders are trying to get survivors or civilians, whatnot, into these 2 ships all the way at the end. And from my perspective, it was all the way to the left of the board. And these are multiple 4x4 tables connected to one another, and at the end there's 2 ships, so they're trying to get there. But among the survivors, there's one person that's like the high value target. If that person dies, and the GM basically controlling the whole event, he has that model marked down, and so there was a chance so that model or that character could get destroyed at any point. And I'll get back to that in a second. So the battle's progressing and all that, and one of our allies was on the opposite end of the table, because there was like almost like there was 2 guys on our side, on the other side across from us, and then on my side we had 2 guys. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4. I think it was 4 of us attacking. Yeah, so the guy all the way to my right across from me, he was getting basically 2v1, and he was holding it off with Crucible Guard, which he ended up getting the MVP because he did a lot. without his positioning and lasting as long as he did, I don't think we would have been able to win the event. And so I focused on taking out as many buildings as I could. And at some point, the defenders got one of the blimps, put 3 of the civilians on there. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna take that thing out. So I planned 3 turns in advance to use my cats on feet turn to basically ghostly through a building and charge the blimp and destroy it, and then kill the 3 guys on it. So I was planning that for a long time, and I just kept that in my head. You know, I was doing other things that didn't require too much planning first, and then I just kept I kept the cats there. And so I think it was the 3rd turn, I pop feet, so I place one of the cats to the left so that it has line of sight to the blimp. And then now they have ghostly because of the feet, and then I also have battle lust on them, and then I charged. 1 cat destroyed the blimp, I believe, and the other 2 started attacking the guys that survived. So 1 guy fell from the blimp because we're pretending that thing is in the sky. So 1 guy fell and he died. The other 2 guys survived with tough rolls, and then the cats finished off 1 guy and the other guy was left. But none of them were the high value target. The Crimson, the Crucible Guard player, which was our ally, he attacked one of the models and it ended up being Kane. So Kane was the high value target, and so he had all the stats of a warcaster, and not a full warcaster, but he had a 6 focus and health or whatever. And so he has to escape. And then in the middle of the battle, the GM was basically saying that there was like a storm coming. So I told one of my allies, and I was like, dude, I think they're gonna get reinforcements. And they were like, oh, okay. And they, I think he knew already, but he didn't pay too much mind to it. And I told the other guy across, and he looked like he agreed. And so Kane got reinforcements. Like there was looked like a hunter or something like that, a light jack, and a unit of trenchers. The civilians were played by trenchers, and they had the stat line of trenchers and all that. And that kind of turned the game around, because initially we were in the lead for a while, and then finally they moved those models or whatever, and but they couldn't get close enough, and at the end the attackers won. Very fun, very engaging. Everyone did what they could to participate and all that. Very friendly environment, very nice, and a lot of cool pro plays, honestly, because like the narrative event, what it ends up doing is it creates situations that you wouldn't normally see on a normal, just a standard run-of-the-mill SR. And just having all those people together and seeing those interactions. My ally was playing the new Crix, which was cool to see that being played and all that. So you got all these elements going around, and it's just an extremely fun game. It was just fun, and that's, for me, in my heart at least, that's what I want for Warmachine to be. Yes, you have the competitive side, and I understand that, and I even participated in that in the past, but I do want the fun side to persist, and that's why I appreciate groups like Tried and True, because they know what's up. They know what really engages people, and I want to see more of that, and I love the direction that many participants in the community are taking upon themselves to give to the community and bring players in. Like, we had a player that I think he was a new player. He never played before. He was playing and he was having fun and all that stuff. So it's fun to see Warmachine at that level, that you can enjoy yourselves, that and just have fun with the models you have and the models across from you. And that was great. We had other events that we participate afterwards, and we had a crazy event late night for Infinity, and there was so much things going on in there. All I can say was just bananas, and we had a good time there. Somehow we ended up building a car. Yeah, it's, other people cover this a little better than I have, but that was fun. And then finally, the last day, we basically we're just chilling. talking to people, wrapping up. And yeah, our train was at 2:30, so we kind of wrapped up a little early. Did the check-in in the hotel. The hotel that we went to was the Churchill, now that I remember. And we had a good time. That freaking hotel was humongous. The room, like, it 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 was two beds or whatever, but it was insanely huge. Like, you can fit like 10 people in there comfortably. That's how big it was. And it was cool because I was able to hobby a little bit and organize my stuff. I ended up buying a couple of things. I ended up buying the Lucent lamp system, which was, it's amazing. I'm actually looking at it right now. I set it up almost immediately when I got home. I bought into the Steel Rift game, which I've yet to build the models, but I plan to build at some point. My attention is focused on Warfare Weekend. I've been asked for the narrative event, and the event is basically the Siege of the Orgoth Temple, 12 players, and I'll talk about it in detail at some other point, but right now what I'm doing is building the temple as we speak. So I've been doing it for a couple of hours today. I've been working on it several hours in total, maybe 8 or 9 hours total so far, whether it's planning, whether it's drawing. Today I just did the entrance of the temple. I did the first floor, or the layout of the first floor, which is currently gluing as we speak, and I started the 4 large spires. So what's the idea behind the event? The idea is to foster as much teamwork as possible. I'm gonna focus on the first level today, try to make sure that it's also modular, because I plan to ship this directly to St. Louis, and then that's gonna get basically set in the convention at some point. But I'm very excited. Both events have been sold out. So first event is on Friday, the second event is on Saturday. There may be a potential for a third event, I'm not sure yet. We'll see how that goes, but it's very exciting to see what's going to come up next. The desire for me personally is that more events, more narratives, not to replace the competitive side, because the competitive side is also good, but it's just to have another aspect of the world that if you don't want to be in a competitive event, or you want to do a competitive event and the narrative event, you have that choice. Local game stores can run narrative events, and I've seen people in the South do it and all that, very successfully rather. And it's just very exciting that we're in this time in Warmachine where new armies are popping up, a new setting, the story is advancing, and then you have individuals who are taking upon themselves to do that, like Tried and True are doing. And a lot of inspiration I got from them, just seeing what they were able to do, and hopefully I can do the same in my own way rather. In the end, it was very exciting. I'm very excited where Warmachine is locally. I play in Nanuet, New York, in a game store called Toy Wiz, and they opened an account with Steam Forge Games, and we're talking about running journeyman leagues, and we're getting old players that played in Mark II are coming back, and Mark I are coming back, and it's just really cool to see the game being revived into this new stage and getting new models, and it just, the excitement is there, and I want to ride that wave as best as possible. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you guys some point in the future. Hopefully I see some of you in Warfare, and we'll continue this journey on. Thank you.